a picture is better than text and a video is better than picture. And a video that speaks in the target audience language is always better.
Welcome to the AI for Creative Entrepreneurs podcast. I'm Kira Hug, co-founder of the Copywriter Club, and on this show, my co-host Rob Marsh and I focus on helping you stay ahead of the curve. We'll show you how to use AI to maximize your creativity, simplify your work and life, and reinvent your creative career so AI works for you, not against you. Join us as we explore the intersection of AI, creativity, and career. If you create videos, chances are views, likes, and engagement are a part of how you measure success. We all want our audience to take in our message, but imagine if everyone that watched your video didn't even understand it. How well would your content perform? Across the world, billions of people struggle to engage with great content every day, and it's a problem. At least it was, until this week's guest's company saw the opportunity to use the power of AI and give every creative the opportunity to reach a worldwide audience. Oz Krakowski, Chief Revenue Officer at DeepDub, joins us to talk about his journey in the world of AI, his views on the content space, and the possibilities that AI is opening up for all creative entrepreneurs. But before we jump into that interview, this podcast is sponsored by our AI course, AI for Copywriters and Creatives, which has more than 200 copywriters, content writers, and other creatives who have jumped into the course to learn how to use AI as a creative collaborator in their businesses. With access to this course, you can confidently use AI tools in your writing, in your research, and in your strategic thinking without losing your distinctive voice and style. This course includes the 10 things you need to know before you write a prompt, 5 modules that are designed to help you understand generative AI and ChatGPT, an updated list of over 100 of the best writing tools so you'll know how to make AI work for you without having to sift through literally thousands of tools that come out every single week, and dozens of lessons and over-the-shoulder demonstrations so you can actually see how we use these different tools in action. By the end, you'll even have the opportunity to be certified as a prompt engineer, which is a great way to demonstrate your new AI abilities when you talk to new clients and are looking for the next project. You can get started with this course by going to thecopywriterclub.com/AI4C. Okay, let's kick off our episode with Oz.
So, Oz, how did you get involved in AI? Like, what was the trajectory that got you into the field?
I started from a very technological background. I come from a family that we were brought up with technology back in the days of the Sinclair and the Apple II and the first IBM PC, and we're very involved in this world back in Israel. And at some point, I graduated. I did my bachelor in electrical engineering in Tel Aviv University, and decided I needed to actually fund my studies. So I looked for a job and realized I can actually get a good job as a software engineer, and decided to combine what I'm studying for, electrical engineering and software engineering, coding basically, and found a job as an embedded programmer or coder, writing code, writing software for hardware basically. And so I found myself getting into a company, an American corporate called Texas Instruments, and I started, pushing the envelope and continuously push the envelope on my capabilities and what I can do, and started getting more and more responsibility there, and eventually ended up in a management position handling business. I traveled the world, and as part of my experience with TI, I lived in 4 continents, beyond Israel, also in Europe, Asia, and eventually ended up in the US back in 2007. But at some point, I also realized that I did my master's in the US, my master's in business administration. But I realized, looking back at what I did, that I was constantly everything I did was very entrepreneurial. Even when I did it in the company was intrapreneurial in a way, because when they sent me to Europe, they pretty much sent me with a message: we needed to do this, find the people, identify the project, make it happen. When they sent me to Asia, find the people, make it happen. And I worked pretty good in that environment, and I pretty much thrived in an environment that gave me the freedom to operate on my own with my own drive, which led me to the understanding that I'd like to start my own business. So at some point back in 2012, I quit Texas Instruments and started a startup that was entirely different than what we do at DeepDub. Was in fact in the healthcare business, but was also involved with artificial intelligence. But the idea was to impact people. I'd like to step out of working on creating things in the shadows, in the backgrounds, things that are like 3 or 4 layers under or away from the actual customer. Think about your mobile phone, for example. Back then I was involved with technologies that are, with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and this type of technology are so far from the actual consumer. And I wanted to have a better impact, to really be connected to my target audience. And so I founded a startup with a friend. We went on for 8 years, and unfortunately, COVID pretty much shut the door on us. But at the end of my previous startup, my two brothers started their own startup that they've been working on the concept for a couple of years. And we've been always, we're family, so we've been talking through it constantly. But as my startup was shutting down at the beginning of 2020, DeepDub was just founded at the end of 2019. And so, as mine was shutting down, DeepDub was gaining traction, and at some point, I just joined Ophir and Ear in this very exciting journey.
So let's talk about DeepDub. What is it? What is it as a product? What is the vision for the company?
Sure. So the concept is that every business has a story to tell, but stories don't always traverse the globe, which is where AI powered localization, AI powered dubbing comes into play. It's a cutting edge innovation that is reshaping the audiovisual landscape. And we at DeepDub, we identify that early on, among the first to actually pioneer this field. And in order to pretty much enable creators of all kinds, whether entertainment or not, to adapt their story, to adapt their content to audiences worldwide, enabling them to break the language barriers and cultural gaps of the experience in order for their story to resonate with audiences around the world. Um, Deep Dub is really at the forefront of this innovation. We started targeting the highest tier type of content, addressing the needs of the Hollywood studios, the top quality type of content. And recently, we also launched our effort to address the needs, or to take everything we learned in that area and address the needs of creators of all kinds, whether that's professional creators, YouTubers, influencers, ad agencies, or even you and I.
So at one level, it could be described as a translation service, but clearly DeepDub does a lot more than just translate. What are the other things that the service does that makes it so valuable?
I think the best way to describe it very quickly in a very short couple of sentences, the DeepDub Go that we launched about a month ago enables everyone to take a simple video that they created and dub it into multiple languages in a few clicks of a button.
I'm hoping that Brandon, who edits our podcast, can jump in there and maybe translate a few of these lines.
Ich hoffe, dass Brandon, der unseren Podcast bearbeitet, da reinspringen und vielleicht ein paar dieser Zeilen in 3 oder 4 Sprachen übersetzen kann.
Just to show what that's like. Who knows? We'll see if we can do that. But it seems like it's really cool. If you've got a product that you want to take into other countries, but you maybe don't have those language skills, does it do anything besides change the audio? Does it also affect the video, the way that somebody's lips might form around the words, those kinds of things, so that it looks more natural?
Let me take this question even more broadly. Okay, so beyond just the video might be exciting, but I'll take it more broadly because there are multiple aspects. So going back to what I said before, we take everything we learned from from the big studios, from the Hollywood studios, and try to bring that into the world of everyone, basically, and especially creators. And there's a multitude of factors that you need to consider when you take content and you try to adapt it and localize it, especially audiovisual content, into multiple languages, into other languages. Um, and one thing that you're referring to the lip sync, but I will say there is more than that. There is the adaptation to the content, contextual adaptation. Miles in the US are kilometers in Latin America, right? Measures, locations, right? Or sometimes words that I don't want to say in a different language where they're maybe offensive or prohibited sometimes even. So even before we even jump into the video itself or the picture, even on the text itself, there's a bunch of things that we need to consider. There's also adjusting to the length of the text. German, for example, is 20% on average longer than English, and Spanish is about 10% shorter than English. So if I'd like to take everything we say here and dub it into Spanish or dub it into German, I would need to consider it because the literal translation might not work, because literal translation will end up with me talking in German over the next talking segment because it becomes 20% longer. So there's another level of adaptation that requires us to adjust to the timing, maybe adjust the speed that I'm talking at. And then, of course, back to what you said, Rob, changing the video. So this is another aspect that AI suddenly brings into play and brings that capability. As for DeepDub, we were able to demonstrate that about a year and a half ago. We realized that there are multiple constraints of changing video, especially in the entertainment side. You can do it in the creation process, specifically if you're dealing with a new production, then it's easier to deal with because you have access to the cast to get their consent. I mean, if we think it's challenging to use someone's voice, then think how challenging it would be to have their consent to change their face. So basically, in the creation side, maybe possible because you can talk to them, but what we developed is a method of using AI dubbing at scale. So a lot of the time, we are actually dealing with library content with a TV series that was created 10 years ago, and having access to the cast, to the production team is practically impossible. So we decided to pretty much not deal with it at this point. We just didn't see the commercial justification, but it is possible. And I think that at some point it'll become widely available to have the ability to localize or translate the text, adapt it, use whatever voice you'd like, your voice, someone else's voice, obviously voices that are with permission, and then also be able to adjust the picture so it looks even better.
Let's talk about the opportunity and the exciting part and all the benefits with maybe some specific examples of what this makes possible for smaller business owners, like the creators you're mentioning, the copywriters and content writers who listen to the show. I can imagine this opens up opportunities for us to take our YouTube content and reach new audiences, which Rob and I are excited about. There's also opportunity to take course content if you have a course and you have video content to now show up in front of a new audience that you didn't have access to previously. But there are probably so many other use cases for smaller business owners. Can you share a few other ones?
Absolutely. And I think that's what gets me fired. It's the fact that we take language is a skill, it's a learned skill, and we take it for granted. And the ability to enable people worldwide to access content in their own language is something that it's almost a right that is being denied of hundreds of millions of people, maybe even billions of people every day. You talk about courses, you talk about YouTube content, you talk about information and experiences that are that people just don't have access. And I constantly use the country of Indonesia as an example because there are about 200 million people over there, but there's not an established dubbing market or dubbing industry there as there is in Europe, for example, or Latin America. But the rate of illiteracy are relatively higher than Western world, which means that subtitles don't cut the message in or don't bring the message in, and localization is essential, or dubbing is essential in order to deliver that message. So the opportunities are across the board, from ads to courses, e-learning. I'm excited about e-learning. I'm excited about corporate videos, people that would like their technology to be accessible to others, but the entire website, for example, is in one language. I use also that example of a lot of website you go and there's like at the top right side there is a button says change the language of the website, and when you do this the entire text changes to a different language, but the videos usually don't. The videos will stay with the same language. But why not have the videos change as well? And I think everyone's eyes opened when Mr. Beast managed to increase his subscriber base in Latin America when he started dubbing his videos into Spanish, and pretty much made it very, very clear there are audiences that are hungry for content, thirsty to hear what everyone is saying, but they just don't have access otherwise. So increasing access to content is I think the key message.
So I love thinking about some of the possibilities and what we could do in our business or what other businesses can do. But there's possibly some drawbacks here as well. Deep fakes are a thing. I'm curious, could somebody take the software that you guys have created, this AI engine, and could I take, say, some video off of one of Kira's reels and create a deep fake, using this kind of software? And what do you think about those kinds of risks? I mean, it's not just this product. There are lots of products out there that come with these kinds of risks. Let's talk about that for a minute.
I agree, there are risks with the technology, but at the same time, every technology eventually, it ends up with what you do with it. In the end, as DeepDub, we're not allowing this to happen because we keep the technology close to us and we give you access to a platform that is well controlled. We are among the only companies that are able to talk on all the ethics and the legal aspects of it, which is why we're trusted by the Motion Picture Association and we work with the Hollywood studios. It absolutely a thing for you to consider when you work with a company, to think about the legal, ethical, moral aspects of the technology and the way that company is making use of your information. Whether some company can now start crawling the web and access information and use that, that can happen. And I think guardrails are going to be in place more and more as we keep progressing. But at the same time, companies that are paying attention for this type of concerns from the get-go, from day one, will be able to bring that message or bring that innovation to the hands of creators and to the hands of people to use ethically and use morally. If you remember, CDs when they came in, people were afraid that everyone's going to steal videos and steal music. But eventually, surprisingly, Blu-rays still sell. I don't think anyone is busy copying Blu-rays these days.
What are some potential downsides you see for smaller businesses who maybe don't adopt this technology over the next few years as it rolls out? I can imagine if you aren't staying up to date on this and thinking more globally about access, then your business, if you're a media-based business, like you could just be taken out by someone who maybe started off smaller, but thought about all the opportunity and started using something like DeepDub. So I guess what are the potential consequences of not staying up to date and testing these new tools over the next year or so?
That's a very interesting question, and I to be honest, I think it's just like with every other type of technology. When you run a business, at least in the in our world, especially if it's a for-profit business, you're trying to grow, and growing in our world means definitely in a world of content means getting more exposure. And if you're in a business that needs more exposure to your content through whatever extent in order to grow, then you need to start thinking yesterday about localizing your content. And AI powered localization, AI powered dubbing is a means to have access to it that is affordable, that is fast, that can bring you quality, and you can be in control of the entire process. Traditionally, the process is very complex, very cost inefficient, takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, requires multiple players, and which is pretty much why it was only exclusive to very complex projects. Television and film are, used to be at least, still are to some extent, high budget projects that can afford it. Mr. Beast can afford it; he makes a lot of money. But can a small YouTuber afford it as well? And even before, I talk about for profit, but even not profits that are trying to deliver a message, a church that is trying to to address its audience. Even in the U.S., we not everything is done in English. In fact, Spanish is a second is a an official second language. To some people, it's the first language. So to many, actually, to millions of people, it's their first language. So if you're creating something in the United States, why not have it in Spanish as well? Or if it's in Spanish, why not have it in English?
It's as I'm thinking about the different uses, it strikes me that in the past, there have been actors who've been criticized for having terrible accents in movies. Like Russell Crowe, I think, did a bad British accent, and Kevin Costner had no English accent in Robin Hood. You guys could fix that problem for them, I'm assuming. With this kind of localization, it's almost like this add-on layer where actors don't need to act quite as much as maybe they did in the past, or they don't need to work with a language specialist or a pronunciation specialist. Is that the kind of stuff that you're doing with Hollywood now, or is it going even beyond that?
So you're touching a very, very important piece of information that is also something that I have to say here I took from Macon. If you remember that concept of thinking versus dunking, and also the focus of shifting towards the editing and composing, and rather than the mundane tasks. When we talk about entertainment, the creative side of things, the performance, is something that is, I think, very unique. To some extent, can be replicated, but in the end, even when we do high quality content, we didn't talk about it, but we can talk about methods of doing AI dubbing. But one of the methods is using speech to speech technology. Speech to speech technology basically enables us to borrow the performance or get inspired of a performance of a voice actor and apply a specific voice style to it. But we still need a creative voice actor to provide the performance. Um, in other words, the creativity side of it is still being provided by people in the process. And I don't think that's going away so fast. I think the creativity is just maybe shifting, but it's still required. AI can be taught to be creative, but in the end, it can only recreate things that it learned before in certain ways. And true innovation and creativity still comes from people.
I'm definitely signing up for the version that makes me sound like Sean Connery in all of our future podcasts. I think that'd be kind of fun.
A funny thing about voices, especially in established markets, in markets that are so used to watching content, entertainment content that is dubbed to their language, there are already established voice actors. If I take, for example, Latin America, and we try to use Tom Hanks' original voice into Spanish, people will tell you, "Hey, it sounds great, but it's not how he sounds. It's not his voice," because they're so used to hearing him in a different voice, in someone else's voice. So for the entertainment side, some voices, especially the super talents, are not going to be replaced anytime soon. I don't think so. But in new markets, where it can be done, it can definitely be a breakthrough. Regardless, we talked about accents, and we have several cases right now that we're dealing with of removing accent, enabling accent, and things like this that customers want to have.
And what is the motion prompting? Is that related to what you just shared, or is that something separate? How does that work?
It's separate. Emotion prompting is an entire new field that is extremely exciting. I have to say. If I talked about speech to speech, where we borrow the performance from a performer, we call it voice guide. The emotion prompting is where it comes into play in cases where we don't have a performance and we are actually trying to add emotion to voice that is generated from text. So basically, think about, ChatGPT can read text and create text, and there is a context to it, and you know how you can almost have a dialogue with ChatGPT and ask questions about what happened, and it feels like really understands what you're talking about. Um, what we created is a text-to-speech engine, basically an engine that creates voice or dialogues from text that understands the context of the text. So for example, I tried just yesterday to use that platform, our platform, to create a dialogue from text, but there was a linguistic error in the text, and the voice did not come up properly until I fixed it. and it, because it really understands the text and tries to apply emotion based on the context of the text. And emotion prompting is the ability to change for us, as someone to come from outside, the person to come from outside and tell the AI to put a specific emphasis on certain parts of a segment of voice or of a sentence and say, here I want you to sound more sarcastic, sad, angry, amused, giggly, or a little bit change that perspective of the AI, how it will actually deal with the content. Because the same sentence I can say in many, many ways. Really depends on what is the emotion I try to convey. It doesn't tell it to put an emphasis on a specific word, for example, because that's going to come from the context. It does tell it to say, to be, and we have ways of doing that as well, but the emotion prompting gives it a context, a emotional context to that specific sentence.
So this is really interesting. So could I take like a recording of a politician who's being sarcastic and put it through this and say actually make him sound more contrite and actually change the context of a conversation? That's what we're talking about doing here, right?
Technically, yes. Yeah, we wouldn't
No, I'm
probably
not
do
saying I want
that.
to do that necessarily, or that somebody
Technically.
good would do that, but I'm just trying to like wrap my brain around like the capabilities here.
I love how your mind, Rob, goes to all the trouble you could cause, and I'm thinking about all the positive things you can do, and you're just going straight for trouble.
I like both because again, I can see like some of the positive
Yeah.
stuff, but I'm also thinking like, I mean, there are definitely politicians who are not good people, right? That could make themselves more appealing, and conversely, there are good people out there that we could use to make it sound worse or better, whatever. So, yeah, I'm just like trying to figure out like all of the ramifications of it.
When I look at it, I think about the ability to create localized content fast, because I can take, for example, our conversation and I can transcribe it into text, and then on the text itself I will create something that is different than what we have, but it's still very good. It's not going
Yeah.
to be exactly the same emotions that we have in the discussion, but it's going to traverse to a different language. It's going to be accepted and still resonate with the audience. And if I can do it fast, effective, and cost efficient, then I'm breaking a barrier here, because I'm providing you the means to actually do something that you couldn't do before.
What are some use cases for the content creators and again, like the creative freelancers that might be, more positive use cases for this type of emotion prompting?
Dub your podcasts, your YouTube videos, audiobooks, articles. You have an article, a blog post. You'd like to create an excerpt, a social media post with a small piece of it. I mean, I'm imagining a snapshot of the page and saying, a key phrase out of it, one sentence, two sentences, something that is very quick, and having it in multiple languages. Specifically, if it's a ad campaign that needs to talk to your target audience, we all know that a picture is better than text and a video is better than picture, and a video that speaks in the target audience language is always better. So all of these things that you can do quick, you can do fast. You don't need to go into a studio. You can do all of it from the browser at home or in your office. Basically enable you to access new audiences. Of course, it goes to even more professional type of consumers or customers, such as e-learning, online courses, edutainment, corporate videos, webinars, a lot of content that is in video, etc.
So Rob and I could use it for sure on our podcast, not on the YouTube channel, but just on our regular audio podcast. we could use it and grow our access, increase our access.
Like we can break into South America by translating it to Spanish, or Portuguese into Brazil, that kind of a thing.
Absolutely, yes.
So can you talk through how we use it? I know this isn't a demo and there'll be some people who will listen to this and not see it, but can you just talk through like how much time goes into using this tool? I know you said it's fast, but how does it work when we actually sit down to do it?
Yeah. So basically, essentially, for using our platform to start with, as simple as going on DeepDub.ai, find the button to join or to access DeepDub Go. The platform is called DeepDub Go. That's a platform that is enabled for everyone. And once you get access, I think today we still haven't opened it to the worldwide. It's still a waiting list, but we're bringing people slowly on board. And within a few weeks, it's going to be opened entirely to everyone. You go on board. The platform looks like a simplified video editing tool. You'll have instructions on how to upload your video. If you don't have a video, you just want to create audio, you can just start creating segments of text and generate them. But let's say you start from a video. What happens is the following. You upload a video, literally drag and drop your video. The video starts getting processed by the system. At the end of it, you will immediately get a transcript of the video. So everything that has been said is going to be in text. Next to it, you'll find automatically the translation of it into that language that you initially mentioned that you'd like to have. If you want more, then you'll have additional episodes or additional languages that you can use for the same episode. So you can have in a project multiple episodes, and for each episode you can dub it into multiple languages. So you can basically, if you started with Latin America Spanish, you'll open that language, you'll see your transcribed text, and immediately the translation will show up. If you go to German, for example, it'll do the same, only into German. You choose the voice out of a list of voices. So your default voice that the system will use could be a male, female, and you can choose a basic emotion for the emotion prompting. If you don't choose, a default one will be used. And then you press a button to generate the audio. From that point on, how much you invest in it is up to you. So you wait a couple minutes, depending on the length of your text. All of the text segments will be generated into dialogue. You can export everything as an MP4 and post it to the world, relax and watch your exposure to your content goes up. Or if you'd like to actually curate it and make sure that everything is fine and increase there's always room to make it better in terms of the quality. I'd like the emotion to be here. I don't like the translation here because the transcription here was breaking the sentence into two parts, and I'd like it to be the same part. For the contextual creation of the voice, will actually consider both parts as one, etc. So there's multiple things that you can actually consider, and one of the things that we're working on before we open it, we make it entirely open, is to have all those tips and tricks, available to everyone, so you can actually know what to do, how you can basically get your quality higher with simple steps. It's always easier if you speak the target language. If you're trying to dub into Spanish, then, it's easier if you actually speak Spanish. If you don't, you can actually collaborate as well on the platform, bring someone that speaks the language and have them give you comments. Hey, here it sounds a little bit, it doesn't sound right, or you should use this word and not the other word, etc. So, and you can make those adjustments or have them actually do it for you.
So I know it's not in general release yet. I've signed up for the wait list, so we'll see if I get bumped to the top of the list or not. But when it's released, what is this going to cost people? When we started out talking about Hollywood and doing this in big picture productions, I'm imagining, well, yeah, I mean, these budgets are millions of dollars. Most podcasters who may want to, be heard in Mexico instead of just the United States obviously don't have $1 million budgets. So what's that going to look like?
First of all, you're absolutely right. It's different, and also in terms of the capabilities that the system that we have internally. When we go to a high quality, theatrical or TV production, it's not the same. Obviously, what you can tolerate in a YouTube video is not what you're willing to tolerate when you watch something on Netflix, for example, or definitely in cinema, which is why we have this difference. But essentially, the platform itself, the DeepDub Go platform, is a classic SaaS platform. You go online, we're going to have 3 tiers available. One is a freemium where you can play with the platform and do something, short content, limited capacity. Then there's going to be another tier that is under $100 with certain limitations that give you the ability to do something more. And then there's going to be another tier that is slightly above. And of course, there is an enterprise level for customers that need multiple users on the platform, limited ability to generate content, and additional features.
And I suppose most of this is based off of the amount of content we're putting in there. So, it's like 4 hours of content or 12 hours of content, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, we measure it by words or letters that are being used to generate. So in fact, you can say that a lot of the service is almost given for free as long as you generate in the end. So the translation is almost for free, I would say. It's like you get the transcription, you get the video immediately transcribed, translated, and then the generation is what you actually pay for.
Seems like there's a good opportunity here for job creation too. We talk a lot about writers losing their jobs, and there's fear around many people losing jobs, but it seems like there's a role here for someone, I don't know what you would call it, to do this work and go in and use a tool like yours for my client. If Rob is my client, then he wants me to give him access to multiple countries and languages, then he'd hire me to actually do the work and spend the time to make sure it's quality work and then to check it at the end. Seems like a really good opportunity. How do you see that, or the potential there for creating new job opportunities?
I love this question and the way you presented it, because it's another thing that I'm actually very excited about, because it is real. There are multiple opportunities that, not potential opportunities, real opportunities that already exist. And we're always being faced with the question, but at the same time, people are not aware that we are on a daily basis being contacted by people from within the creative community, whether translators, voice actors, dubbing directors, from all sorts, the entire spectrum of the creative community, that are contacting us to find ways to work with us, for us, because they understand that there is an evolution of a lot of those creative jobs, even in the world where AI takes a prominent position. Specifically here with the DeepDub Go, one of the roles that we created is the adapter. Is a person that will go in and will basically curate the transcription, the translation, the output of the voice. In the past, you would need someone to do the transcription, another person to do the translation, another person to either record the voices and do some dubbing director. Now one person can all of these roles are being fused into one role, one person that can actually do this for simple content, right? I mean, for spoken content. If it was more technical information, like an online course in physics, that adapter will need to understand physics in the target language. So it's not enough that I can understand physics in English. I need to understand how to talk about physics in Spanish if I want to be the adapter for that content in Spanish. And these are opportunities for people to come in and have a job in something that they maybe never had before, in order to support content creators that have that type of content and need to make it accessible to different audiences.
So I'm curious where you see this going in the future, and what becomes possible sort of as the next step. So, for example, if I'm on vacation and not able to show up for a podcast interview, could Kira, assign half of the questions that she asks and say, hey, let's have DeepDub create Deep Rob to answer these questions? Like, does that become possible at some point, or is it more limited than that?
I actually think that it will be possible. How fast will it get to a point where we will not be able to notice that it is not you? I'm not sure it's going to be that fast. But if you ask me to look into into the future, and I've said it in interviews a couple of years ago already, and I think we're starting to see steps towards that. But if my vision for all of this technology to come together is, I'm going to throw, a potential use case that is similar to what you mentioned. But my potential use case or futuristic use case is to have for example, sports broadcast where one commentator is a real person and the other one is entirely virtual, maybe based on someone's likeness or not,
We could bring
or
Jack
entirely,
Buck back from the dead and have him. That would be amazing.
or maybe what, to me also more fascinating is someone entirely fictional but still extremely knowledgeable, right? And not only that they're having a real conversation, but they're also having it in real time in multiple languages. And this is being broadcasted, think about, I don't know, World Cup in 5 years from now, and you have it, in 120 languages simultaneously, everyone in the world. For example, I'm talking about soccer because it's more of a worldwide phenomenon.
So before we start to wrap, if we can step away from the work that you're doing at DeepDub and just speak to kind of what's happening in AI in a broader sense, I'm curious to hear what maybe does concern you and then what you're excited about outside of your work.
I will say that generative AI is definitely a place that really excites me. Everything around generative AI in the applications, and I'm fascinated by the new applications we see daily with generative AI. Just like everyone else, I've been working with ChatGPT and Jasper and other tools that are enabled by generative AI, and the capabilities seem to be endless. From and especially on the creation side, especially on the ability to do things in a way that is way faster, and not to be confused, not replacing people, but accelerating, making us more efficient. If I needed a week to create a blog post in the past, I can do this. I can do 80%, 90% very fast, and then spend my time on the things that really matter to me, the actual essence of the content, rather than choosing a word here and there, because the output is already good. I just need to, I choose the topic, I choose the data, but I let it create very fast. And those opportunities are fascinating. I'm really passionate about everything in it. I think that we have all been very exposed to what we can do with text in the past half year, but we are just starting to get exposure to what can be done with audiovisual content. So that's the next, and I had that discussion with Paul at Macon, which is, look around, look around. Everything is about text, and there's almost no audiovisual. And I'm excited about the next year, where I truly think that we're going to see breakthroughs, multiple breakthroughs around that area. Rob, you talked about, virtual avatars that are talking in different languages very coherently, very intelligibly. You sounds just like ChatGPT. It sounds very very human like, and that are really contribute to discussion, and almost indistinguishable from a human person, and can really enhance our experience in multiple ways. I think another prediction to that would be that we're going to see more generative AI in entertainment as well, beyond just the basic AI dubbing that we're involved with, but see more synthetic voices in cinema. We started seeing it in the past couple of years, with other companies like us that are in the field, with creation of voices of people that are no longer with us or don't have the ability, voice cloning specifically. And I think we're going to see more in terms of enhancing graphics, not only the voice, but also voice and sound, ability of AI to sing, to really participate in more meaningful ways in different types of content.
Yeah, sign me up. I'm excited to see where this goes. I have this feeling that Kira's ready for virtual Rob so she can do some emotional adjustments. And maybe virtual Rob won't jump to the negatives as much as real Rob does.
Well, speaking of the negative, I feel like you didn't actually mention what you're concerned about or what might keep you up at night. I don't think you mentioned. You talked about what you were excited about. Does anything kind of still anything you're keeping a close eye on right now?
Yes, I will say that we are working very hard to make sure that we are always on the ethical side and on the legal side of everything that we do. And I think that's very important. And it's an important message. If you're dealing with a company, make sure that what you do is ethical. You're on the right side of morality and also on the legal side. I will not use Rob's voice without Rob's consent. And I've been asked even this week, I've been asked, oh, we need to do this test. Do we need to have permission? Absolutely. We will not do anything without that person's consent and you guaranteeing it. And I will say that in many ways, it's in our hands. So if we allow it to break through that moral barrier and ethical barrier, then it will happen. If we don't allow it, and we put the limit and say this is something that shouldn't be done, and I'm not going to take part of it, then it's going to stop.
Yeah, let's hope everybody shares that ethical line for sure, because I can see a ton of really cool applications here that can help a lot of people grow and expand. But there's definitely some risks here, and we should definitely be keeping an eye on them. So, Oz, if somebody has been watching and listening and wants to try DeepDub or wants to get in contact with you, what should they do?
Go on our website, log into DeepDub.ai, click on the Join DeepDub Go button, and you'll be able to immediately try the platform and decide if it's for you, and if so, sign up. You can always find me on LinkedIn, Oz Krakowski. You can find me on Twitter, and you can send me an email, oz@deepdub.ai or info@deepdub.ai.
All right. Well, thank you. This has been fascinating, and I'm excited to test this out in our business. Rob, I think we're ready.
Yeah, I'm excited to try it too.
All right, we want to thank Oz Krakowski for joining us on the podcast to talk about DeepDub and the future of video localization. I know for this podcast and then the Copywriter Club podcast, we are really excited to think about how we can use tools like this to reach a larger audience of copywriters from all around the globe. And I think tools like this are giving us such an incredible way to reach new people and build community in a larger, more impactful way. So I'm personally excited to dive into it and check it out and figure out how we can use it with our podcast and video content. If you're interested in exploring DeepDub or learning more about video localization, you can connect with Oz on LinkedIn and learn more about his company through the link below this episode. And once again, if you want to jump into our AI for Copywriters course, go to thecopywriterclub.com/AI4C. That's the end of this episode of AI for Creative Entrepreneurs, a Copywriter Club podcast produced by Brandon Burton. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please leave a review of the show on your podcast app so we can reach other creative entrepreneurs who are interested in exploring AI. Or if you're catching this on YouTube, you could always like this video, you could subscribe to the channel, you could leave a comment below. There are tons of choices. Or let us know your favorite takeaway from the show in the comments so we can hear from you. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.